Hey, Dan Antonelli from KickCharge Creative, author of Branded, Not Blanded. On today's episode of Branded or Blanded, we're going to be talking about Hall's Heating and Air in Pampa, Texas. They came to us probably about 6 months ago to do a rebrand for them. So let's take a look at what we have going on here. First, of course, starting with the name. So we have Hall as the name. Always a challenge with last name brands to have a name deliver promise. What this last name brand has going for it is that it's very easy to spell and it's short. So for that, I'm gonna just basically give it a 5 because it has those other positive attributes of being small and, like I said, easy to spell, but there isn't a promise that's inherent in it, so we're gonna give it some points down for that. You could argue that probably the way in which this is done, people would remember maybe having seen it. So for memorability, I think I'm gonna just say it's probably like around the 4. I think there's some elements here. If they're repeated over time with multiple vehicles, you would remember having seen them, the way the striping elements are going diagonal here. There's some aspects of it that I think help make it more memorable. As far as the brand colors are concerned, I think we could say that that's a 3. I don't love the black and the red so much, but I do like the ivory that's introduced to try to soften it, although it's not really a dominant component on the actual truck wrap design. For that, I think a 3. As far as the logo lockup itself, there's a lot of challenges with what the old logo had. Optically, you've got this hole right here in the middle that sits there. So the space that's created by that optical hole there really doesn't make a lot of sense. The script for Hall also adds some elements which makes it a little bit more challenging to read. You can see we're using this outline here to try to make the black more legible on the red background. Typically you don't want to have or rely on outlines to make something more legible. And there's just some kind of random things that are integrated here that I don't quite understand how they're related to the brand itself. So on a logo lockup, I'm gonna say 2. And as we even thinking about the logo too, we of course can't forget about our mascot. So, if we really take a look at the mascot, he's a little scary looking to me. He doesn't seem rendered. The anatomy is really kind of off on this. And he doesn't really necessarily look like, oh my God, like I can't wait for this guy to show up at my house. As far as the wrap itself, some challenges here. You've got the phone numbers spanning across multiple backgrounds. So if you ever heard me speak, I don't like to have any element that spans across different colored backgrounds because it makes it harder to read. They have an outline on the white. So they have a white letter on a white background, and then you're sort of hoping that this black drop shadow is going to make it more legible. It really doesn't work very well in that regard. And then you've got some other things on here that we typically don't want to see. So I don't want a manufacturer logo, train logos here. I don't want service, repair, and new installation. I don't want a Facebook logo. So on the redesign, we tried to think about what genre would make the most sense. They do have a long history and a heritage within the community, which we thought, hey, why don't we leverage that? Why don't we make it look like a company that's been around a really long time? So for this particular brand, we decided to go more nostalgic, obviously more retro themed. So we have our new mascot that we got introduced. We've got the Hall's lettering on here that feels a lot more friendly, a lot easier to read. So we fixed a lot of the things that were challenging. Obviously naming is really gonna remain the same because we didn't change the name. We did introduce the apostrophe S. That was a source of problems for him over the years where people would call him Halls even though the real name was actually Hall. So we decided to go with just adding the apostrophe S into the name. As far as being more memorable at this point, I think this is significantly more memorable than where we came from. You can see the use of these cool brand colors here now with the darker blue and the orange and the ivory, which we kept from the old brand. But the way all of this is integrated just feels a lot more unique, a lot more ownable. So for that, I have that as a 9 as well. And then the logo itself, like I mentioned, we have a much easier to read script. The heating and air lettering underneath in that banner is much more legible. We have the Hall's logo itself sitting in a panel. The nice thing about having a panel-based logo too, if you're considering it for yourself, is that no matter what background that logo will live on, you don't need to ever change the color of it. And of course, the mascot that we illustrated, we could zoom in a little bit on the mascot and you can see some of the details on him that we created. Obviously, he's not flat. He has some dimension to him. There's some highlights on him. And again, just has that friendly vibe. Logo lockup, I have that as a 9. And then the vehicle wrap, I think we really did a great job with the vehicle wrap. Everything is very easy to read. We got rid of all the extraneous things on here. We wrote a new tagline for him, which is "You'll dig the difference," obviously connecting to the whole theme. And then the vehicle wrap, so I have that as a 9. And then our overall score here, I think adds up to a 41. And then showing integration on here as far as how did we take and extrapolate this brand and then integrate it across some different channels. This is their shop. They got all this neon done up here. You know, again, the impression that this gives off just feels very different than where we came from. Lit up at night, it just looks amazing. You can see how this looks at night. Very cool brand. And then you could see some of the other elements that we did for them, their marketing materials, the brochures. This is their membership agreement, some stationery. We did a full brand identity guide for them as well, which was kind of neat. So that just gives them basically a roadmap to follow as far as how to integrate the brand across different channels. This is a billboard we did. They actually had a kind of an interesting story about the billboards. He got such a crazy response from people seeing these billboards with this new branding. And he said, "Dan, you know, we had these old billboards up for so long, no one noticed them. Like they just blended in, and these new billboards just stand out." Of course, just some simple site signs here. And then looking at in the uniforms and then looking at some of the results. So we have, this is one where you have a shorter window to compare, but we have 3 months of 2023 with the old brand versus 3 months of 2024 with the new brand. So we're up 700,000 in revenue comparing those two periods, which is great. Ad spend has decreased from 9.8% to 7.9%. So we're actually spent less money on advertising this year, and yet we had $700,000 more worth of revenue, which is great. And another interesting stat too is booking rates. So 49% to 63%. So you see our booking rates going up. So again, why did the booking rates correspond? Why are the booking rates going up? Of course, that could be a number of different factors, but one thing is very helpful when you have a great polished brand is the people who are calling you already have a notion of what the experience is going to be like doing business with you. They feel more confident about choosing you, and they tend to commit to using you when that brand is speaking to that promise. That's it for today. And if you guys have any brands you would like us to take a look at, shoot us a message, and then we'll see if we can feature you on one of these episodes.